Hi, property people. Thanks for joining us today. As always, we will be sharing ideas, experiences, problems, and solutions for property people like you. Our interviews will get you to know some of the most active professionals in the industry that have achieved some pretty impressive stuff. Hearing about their successes, failures, strategies, and insights, we really hope you enjoy. Just spent an hour with Danny Inman. Danny is a business owner, a property investor, property developer, coach, and mentor, having started out in the education space by being a +1 on a course with somebody else. And that's led him to be doing 20, 30 unit developments, having his own coaching and mentoring company called Prosperity Network. He goes into things like mental health and mindset and his views on the market. So I hope you enjoy. Do share, like, subscribe, and hope to hear from you soon. Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of Property People. This morning, I am incredibly happy to finally be joined with Danny Inman. Mr. Danny Inman has been somebody on my radar for quite some time. He has a strong following online, digitally. We've never actually met in person, but I've been very impressed by some of the information and content he puts out into the public domain. It's not only informative, but incredibly entertaining. Based in Manchester most of the time, or some of the time now, it depends. We'll find out a little bit more based on where he's at today. A property investor, a developer, a business owner, a mentor, and coach. And from what I can see, a thoroughly nice guy. How are you today, Danny? And thanks for joining us.
Oh, really good to be here, Sam. We've been trying to track each other down, vice versa, for a little while. So I'm doing well. I'm in warmer climates, I think, than you at the moment. But it's good to be on your call regardless.
Happy days. Well, I'm very excited to see, to hear much more about you and your story and your background. And where I always start with everybody is, who was Danny Inman at school? Did you always think you'd be in property? Did you always think you'd be a business owner and a mentor? What was school like for you?
I was probably what you would class as the jock in most of the American movies that you see. Very, very capable rugby player, rugby league. I'm a Northern boy, so was pretty much breezed through school, to be honest, on an educational level and sporting wise. So yeah, very much that jock from the movies that you will see. But no, absolutely no idea that I would be in property at all. From very humble beginnings, my knowledge of property were parents had a mortgage and they paid for it, and that was about the extent of the knowledge that I had in the property world. Little bit probably Del boyish at school. I think that came with the jock nature that I was always, the typical stories of selling sweets, but I moved into Von Dutch caps and Mackenzie t-shirts quite early at high school and made good money as a kid out of doing that. So I think there was the entrepreneurial spirit, but not really the knowledge and anything like that on property, especially.
And so when you obviously have that entrepreneurial streak, as I hear many people, they're selling something, they got a paper round, or they're washing cars or something, they're selling sweets. You obviously were keen and interested in making money and found out ways that you could do it. And you were quite good at school as well, because sometimes those two things don't go together. So did you go on to university from school?
Yeah. So not directly. I signed professionally as a rugby league player very young, to be fair, 14, 15. Wow. So even as a kid, I was getting paid a contract. I was sort of the last raft of people that were in that group that were getting paid from teenagers to go on to play professional rugby. So it was laid out for me that I was going to be a professional rugby player. And then when I moved into that environment, I saw it wasn't particularly well paid. I was very well paid for a 15, 16-year-old, don't get me wrong. But when you looked further in the future and you could see that I'm 35 now, so people were retiring my age, 33, 34, 35, and they were going to get a sort of generic job. So they'd battered their bodies for 15, 20 years. They were in pieces, and then they were retraining to be a plumber or something like that. So it just felt like they were all starting their lives again, and they hadn't really set themselves up. And I didn't love rugby enough as a sport. I loved, being decent at it, but I didn't love it enough as a sport to batter my body for 20 years to then have to restart again at 35, 36. So I walked away at that point, and went to university. Yeah. So it was a big deal. When I walked away, it was a big deal. I had a dad that was very proud that I was a professional rugby player, and I walked away from that, and then went to university, did a civil engineering and advanced maths degree. Got a graduate scholarship with Langell Rourke, a big engineering firm. 2 weeks into the graduate scholarship, I walked away from that and disappointed my mum. So by the age of 22, I'd both parents quite extensively. But yeah, I'd tried both things. I'd done pretty well at both things, but never really enjoyed either particularly. So the problem I had with the engineering degree and the scholarship, the graduate scholarship that I had was, when I do something, I want to do it properly. So the whole degree was about like working out forces through beams down to its algebraic formula. And then you went into the real world environment and they were like, yeah, we've got a computer for that. Or we don't do any of that. Like, I'm flogging my nuts here to be a glorified data entry clerk really. And I'd walked away from both things at that point.
And so was it, because obviously when you're doing well at school, sports, and everybody must be saying that they're quite proud of you and you're doing really well. And then you have those moments of when you're like, shit, I need to change course here. Was there any feeling of like, well, I've kind of pleased everybody to date now, so it's now about me and I need to please myself? Or was it, was it a lot harder than that and you kind of dreading the whole speaking to your parents about it?
Well, actually, it's probably the other way around. I'd love it to have been like a monumental story of stepping away from those things and stepping straight into success. There was a period of time where I really had strong mental health problems, and I don't talk about it frequently because it feels very distant, and it also a little bit now where we are now, it feels a little bit. I don't know. It's so far away from what we are now that I don't always feel right talking about it. I do a couple of times a year, maybe tops. But at that point, when I'd done two things that I was very, very good at and found out I didn't like either, I hit a bit of depression because it was kind of like, well, am I ever going to find something that I'm good at and I want to do and I like to do and love to do? And I started to put so much pressure on myself that, 22 years old, done two things. People were calling me an idiot for walking away from both things. And then I started to believe them. So, yeah, there was a little bit of mental health challenges around that point. And property was an accident, complete freak accident. I was the +1 to somebody else on a 3-day training course that everybody reading this will probably, or hearing this will probably have been on or heard about. I was the +1. I was the afterthought, basically, of somebody else who was already going to a training. It was a complete accident. So yeah, on a level, property, as much as it was an accident, really helped to bring me back round out of my mental health challenges because it gave me a new focus and a new, something to focus on, bit of hope, really. So yeah, that's the story with it.
I think you need sometimes a little bit of luck in life to be able to fall into the right thing. But you were obviously smart. I mean, doing things like advanced maths, has that helped you in business?
Do you know that when you look at my degree, it had absolutely no bearing on what I've done in business whatsoever. But what it did teach me was if you can work hard at something you don't love, when you find something you do love, it's so much easier to work hard. Like that transition is just incredible. So the discipline, the commitment, the willing to do whatever it takes, even if you're not enjoying it, like going the extra mile. I think that's the thing that's carried most value for me over the actual content itself. So I think, people always say, oh, you're a success and you're not a success because of uni, and not going to uni doesn't define you, and they are absolutely right. But I'd still always recommend people go and do it, A, socially, but B, getting that ability to work like a bastard at something you don't necessarily enjoy doing just puts you on such a good standing when you find something that you do, I think.
Yeah, no, I think actually when I've been through it myself, when you're going through that period where you're actually good at something, but you're not enjoying it. When the penny drops that, wow, if I could just find something that I really did enjoy, I'd probably be really good at that and go that little bit further and really excel at it. And when it does, then I think you get this great run at a solid career. Now, before we go into what has turned out to be a very, very what looks like a fantastic career, and we'll get some details on that. That property investing course that you went on, do you mind sharing which one it was that you accidentally fell into on the plus by being a plus one?
I think it was either Whitney or Tigrant. They've changed the names a couple of times since. So I think it would have been Whitney Education, became Tigrant, became Legacy. I think at the moment now it's Asset Academy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I've been around the education world for 12, 13 years now. November 2009 was when I did my first 3-day as the plus one guest of somebody else, basically.
And then did that lead into signing up for courses and then doing some more and
We were sponsored by the parents of the lad I went with to do further training. And yes, just spiraled since then. I've got lots of views on the education world, and people will sort of hear a lot of me talking about the education world because as somebody who's been around it in the property world for 12 or 13 years, I think, at that time it was perfectly right for me. I think that education was, before social media and before the internet really took off, property investing was a bit of a secret sauce, and the only way to get the information really was to go and stand by somebody doing it or pay for the education. Whereas now I think the world's changed a little bit. There's so much information out there that now it's more about community network support and all of that. So it was perfect for me at the time. Did incredible things for me, and I'd never degrade from it. It was good.
Interesting. I mean, I do agree that we are in the information age with the information superhighway, the internet. You've got like data and access to information everywhere you go, compared to previously where you'd have to know somebody or go to a library. And now as well with the connectivity, you've got communities, support networks, which are probably more important. I think is what provides the better education to those that are seeking it. So when we go back to your property investing strategy that you first decided to embark upon, how did you decide? Because back then, was there as many different options? Like today, you've got rent to rent, you've got lease options, you've got commercial conversions. Was there that many back then?
No, probably less. I mean, they existed back then, but they weren't given a shiny title and given a 3-day training course that you could pay $997 for, or anything like that. It's just changed a little bit. I think they existed then. They've always existed. You look at Northwood in the letting industry, and they've been doing rent to rent for 25 years. So, I think stuff's been given more of a title. However, my strategy back then was really dictated by what I had to do because I had no money. I'm literally the started without a penny person. The training was paid for, sponsored by somebody else, and the agreement I had with them was that I would source them deals in place of the training investment, effectively. So that kind of took me on a path of sourcing, and we sourced extensively. In the first 12 to 18 months, we've probably done 100 deals for different people, which built up a decent amount of capital that then, we didn't buy a property of our own for 18 months. But then after 18 months, we built up enough capital through sourcing deals that we could then start investing ourselves. And everyone goes, 100 deals. And, in hindsight, if somebody that said that to me today, I'd be like, get out, or, who's doing 100 deals in this market? But we were in a very different market then. 2009, 2010, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. You couldn't miss. Estate agents were calling you. Nobody was in the market. You literally had your pick of stock because we'd just come out of the crash and people were scared and nobody was buying. Oh God! I mean, those days will be back, at some point in the future. But when I tell everybody what the market was like then, they can't believe it because we're in today's market and it's so hard and so competitive. But no, it was a very different game. So yeah, sourcing was how I started. First 12 to 18 months. This was pre-regulation, pre-compulsory compliance. The market's changed significantly in the last decade, but the strategies have principally been the same.
And so what sort of deals were you sourcing? Like, how would you decide a deal was a deal?
Again, that's changed. I would say 90% of what we sourced in 2010 was money in, money out. As buy-to-let stock, would buy, add value, all in the Northwest. So I'm in Warrington, Runcorn, Widnes, St Helens, Wigan, Lee, all around me. Just typical buy-to-let stock. I was looking back, and you'll see on some of my socials, some of the deals we share. The first deal I bought, I paid 50 grand for, spent 15 grand on a refurb, revalued at 85. Today it's worth 130, 135 grand. And that was just our generic stock, largely money in, money out. Which again, people today will be going, hell, that's crazy. How the hell are you doing those deals? But that was the market at the time. It was honestly estate agents. Because now I've seen a full cycle. I've been in the market for a full cycle, post-crash to where we're going now with the market really heating up. And you can see all the signs. Like when 2010 agents were calling me every day, 2 or 3 times a day. As soon as a property came on the market, they would call you. You'd be the only real buyer. You might be competing with 1 or 2 other people that might have just bought, so they're not in the market. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. It was easy back then.
And so once you had those 100 deals sourced, indeed it was you get these wormholes or periods where you get opportunities that close off eventually. The market's continuously evolving and adapting so that it doesn't become so easy. But then another opportunity opens up. What made you move into where you are today, which it appears like much larger scale developments?
Yeah, I mean, the transition looks quick, but feels slow, I guess, because 18 months, we then went into buy-to-lets. We bought 10 or 15 buy-to-lets in that first year after we'd raised capital. Then we went into social housing. And a big transition was we went into HMO really big. At one point, we had 350 HMO rooms of our own and with JVs. And, we went quite heavily into that. And that was, throwing off decent cash flow. And then I could see the market. I've always tried to I view the market as like a curve, a wave, effectively, a tidal wave. And I always try and jump on the tidal wave before it starts to grow effectively, and then sell before it crashes. So we sold probably 250 of our rooms. We're down to about 100 rooms now, but we were getting really high-end prices because people were buying yields. When the market's changed, it's gone from money in, money out to I've got a load of cash, it's useless in the bank, I want to buy some yield. So we sold a lot of our HMOs at the top of the market. So I think timing's always been really good for us. And we jumped on the commercial to resi probably again 12 to 18 months in advance of a lot of it becoming the generic. Everybody wants to do commercial to resi. And just means we've been able to scale up ahead of the curve, if that makes sense. So now, the 5 to 10 apartment market is very, very busy. So we're now scaling beyond and beyond 20 plus. We're 50, 60, 70 units now in certain developments. And that's just, moving to a market that's not as busy ultimately. You can, if you go and try and buy a buy-to-let in the Northwest through an estate agent at the moment, you're doing a viewing with 25 other people, and you just don't get that level of competition as you scale up. You're competing with 2 or 3 other serious buyers generally.
Very, very interesting. And with those now, let's say 20, 30 unit developments up in the Northwest, I imagine that they've got quite attractive yields on them still compared to especially London and the Southeast. Is your intention for those developments to hang on to them, to refinance almost like a build to rent, or are you looking to sell those units into the market?
Yeah, we make a decision based on what our perception is of the longer term future. So we do a combination of both. So an example, we've got one in Warrington at the moment, which is 17 apartments, 2 retail units and an office, and we'll keep that. It's very town centre. I really back the high street long term. Anyone that follows me on social media, I'm a big believer in the high street. There's a massive myth that the high street's dead. I just think the high street's been changing, has been for 2 or 3 years. So locationally, and if the area is strong, we're doing a lot of build to rent. We're doing another one in Wakefield, which is 13 retail units with 36 apartments above, and we'll retain that. Generally, we like a bit of commercial to resi mix, and we like the high street, so we're doing a lot of retaining there. If it's standalone resi, 10 to 20 units, we'll shift it on, or we'll shift as many as we can on. We kind of have a cut off that if it's not sold within 6 to 12 months, we'll just refinance the ones that are remaining, and we'll go out into the next one. It's just generally how we work.
Yeah, I think generally if you can hang on to stock over the long term, it tends to go up in value in this country anyway. We're on an island. Generally, supply is low and demand is high with increasing population. So if you can hang on to stuff, especially if it's well located, it does make sense to build that build to rent portfolio. In terms of sourcing those types of deals, are you using commercial agents? Are you sourcing them direct to vendor with leaflet dropping? How do these opportunities come to you?
Yeah, a bit of both. I think commercial agents massively. I think because we got ahead of the curve with a lot of this, we prove ourselves before other people, if that makes sense. So it's, for instance, in Warrington, you come into Warrington, it's going to be very tough to buy stock in central Warrington from a commercial agent and get the best deals, because we've got that relationship. We've had that relationship for 5 or 6 years now. So you realistically, you have to get ahead of us in the queue for some reason. And if the deal's particularly strong, you're going to struggle to do that. But there might be a point where we're not in the market. The deal might be too strong. It doesn't work for us based on the return, and you could do it. But yeah, commercial agents have been our strongest. We target a lot of commercial rentals. We always have done. There's a thing with commercial rent that a landlord sooner or later is going to start feeling business rates pain, whether that's 2 or 3 months down the line, whether he uses his 0 rate allowance for the first 3 months, he's going to start feeling some pain at a point in time. And we've always liked to get to landlords who haven't decided they're going to sell yet, but at some point they might transition to. And we've always done it. Commercial rentals that are up for rent, speaking to the agent, saying, I want to chat with the landlord. We're in it to buy. We know it's up for rent, but we just want to chat to see if he would consider selling it. And if he does consider selling it in the future, we'll have a chat. It's always worked really, really well. So yeah, a little bit of a converse way of looking at it. Identifying empty units. We use Searchland. I know a lot of guys use Nimbus or Land Insight. We're Searchland users, and identifying empty stock and contacting landlords direct through there has always worked really well. But yeah, I'd say 50 to 60% of our stock is just commercial agents that bring them direct, knowing that we'll perform.
So a few things that I found interesting there. It sounds like to have built a business around investment development, as well as the mentor coaching, you must be quite good at building systems and processes, so that you can, for example, catch up with a landlord at the point of them not wanting to sell, but then they're in your follow-up effectively, so that eventually when they do want to sell, they're already in your ecosystem, in your network, so that you can be first at the door. And with everything that you do, to be able to cover that much ground in the same 24 hours that we all have, how do you go about setting up systems and processes in your businesses?
Delegate almost everything is the honest answer. There's a book I read quite early called Who Not How by Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if you've read that.
I've not read that.
And it talks about how a lot of the best entrepreneurs don't necessarily learn how to do everything. They find the people who know how to do most things. I'm pretty good at relationship forming. I'm pretty good at sales and closing deals. I'm okay at marketing. The practical side of things, I don't necessarily enjoy. I often joke, I'd rather put Tabasco in my eye than go on site. I have no interest in being on a construction site. I don't enjoy it. I don't speak the trades languages. I don't understand their approach. I don't really think, I know that that's an important part of the development, but I don't think it's the part where the money's really made. I think the money's made in putting the deal together, financing the deal, getting rid of the deal. Although obviously the delivery is as important, but it's just not my strength. So I don't do it. I don't do any of it. there's this whole, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it a lot, and I massively agree. There's a real myth in entrepreneurialism that you should work on your weaknesses. I think that's the biggest nonsense I've ever heard. You should work on your strengths and delegate all of your weaknesses, and that's something I do religiously. Like, I have no interest in getting better at something I'm really shit at, because it will detract from me spending time in an area that I know I'm strong. So I think that's probably the one thing that I would say if anyone wants to grow a decent sized business is delegate all of your weaknesses and really hone in on your strengths.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And one of the other things that caught my attention was the Searchland. Why Searchland and why not Land Insight or Nimbus Maps, or Realize? What is it about Searchland?
I've used all three. Searchland, the owner is very contactable. It's a lad called Hugh. I think it's early stages of business. And I think, without slanting the other two, because I've used the other two and I do like them, I think he is the most likely to make significant changes and continue to develop the product. And I like that in people. The business that we run is how much value can we give without having to charge too much. So we're always adding, extra benefits. And Searchland's one of them, actually. There's an exclusive discount for our members with Searchland. That's not biased. I could have gone to the other two and potentially negotiated the same thing. It is literally just because I think they're very hands-on, they're very engaged, and they want to try and give more value. And I think I love that in people. I think in our industry, and we talked about the education industry a little bit earlier, it's always been how much can I get away with not giving versus how much can I get away with charging. And I'd like businesses that are value heavy and cost fair. Netflix is an example. I always compare us to Netflix for property education, because it's, pay your subscription, stay tuned in. You can have as much as you want, as often as you want. Blockbuster went out of business because you used to have to pay every single time you wanted a bit of something. And I don't think the world works like that anymore. So yeah, I think that's probably the reason with those guys. I've been impressed by them as much as the product.
Very interesting, because actually I use Nimbus Maps. I'm very close to Land Insight, but I've not actually used Searchland, so I'll check it out.
Very similar. Principally they're largely all of the same. But I think if people are going to pioneer change, I think the Hugh especially behind Searchland would do a good job of that.
And when we talk about things like delegating, you do have a business partner that you do mention from time to time that is largely much quieter than you on the socials, let's say. But I assume that there's an element of delegating between the two of you to manage everyday resources. But if you can tell us a little bit about, is it Nathan?
Nathan, yeah, Priestley. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can tell us a little. If you can tell us a little bit about him and how you met and how that relationship developed, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, well, he's actually here with me in Dubai at the minute, and he's very much less active on socials and things like this. It's not really his cup of tea. He always says, "I've got you for that." So, I mean, that's probably part of his delegation. On the other side, we met. We went on tour with each other rugby. When we were kids, so both capable rugby players went with Great Britain students on tour to Australia, a student World Cup, and we didn't really get on, to be honest. We both played in the same position, so there was an element of competition about us. I always remind him I started, he was a sub, and I've got that over him for as long as we live. But he always says he was injured. But no, we didn't really get on, so we didn't really, nothing came from that tour together. We were just very competitive. We liked each other, but we, competing in the same position. And 4 or 5 years after we both got started in property, we reconnected on Facebook. It was weird. Our stories largely followed a similar path. Apart from I went the property education route, he went estate agency, learning on the ground route. But he had a letting agency, I had a letting agency. We were both doing a bit of sourcing. We were both trying to start buying a little bit more aggressively. So we just connected, and it's gone mental since then. He's crazy. You meet people who you just know are going to be a billionaire. Like he has that in him, and he's a very impressive guy. When you meet him, you don't see a lot of him on socials, but what he's doing and what he can do and how he operates on a business level is very, very inspiring. But he's less of the social media side. He's less of, people networking. He's just pure business. He's all action. And he loves the site. He's very capable on site. He's capable at management and team management. He understands construction. So yeah, it's kind of worked really, really well. I've always been good at money and marketing. He's always been good at, getting shit done ultimately. So yeah, we do a lot together. Not exclusive. He's got a lot away from me. I have a lot away from him, but it kind of just happens. It's probably not a conventional joint venture partnership. If I'm teaching people about joint ventures, I'm saying get to know them, credit check them, agreement watertight. We're just a very strange partnership in that there's just an implicit level of trust. Like it's a bond, I think, that just knows the one another would never shaft each other, and it just kind of fits. So yeah, it goes against most of the education I would probably tell people, because I've been in JVs with other people that haven't worked out. And as a result, I say to everyone, trust everyone, but tie up your camels. But my camels are probably a little bit looser with Nathan than they would be with other people, because we just have that implicit trust. Yeah, so he's a good guy.
Do you think that's because you go so far way back and your stories kind of cross through rugby and sport as well, where you do tend to find some sort of bond and affinity when you're working in those team style environments?
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. But I mean, I would never say that two other sports people that have played in the same team might necessarily have the same bond. I think there's a bit of pride. I think that we're both very proud of what the other has achieved, but we're also both very accountable to each other. Like, I wouldn't want to be perceived as having let him down, and I think there's a on the same level, there's a pride thing for him that he wouldn't want to be perceived as having let me down. So I think it's a little bit, we've always held each other accountable, so we are accountable to each other. So I think it's probably more that than anything.
And so when you talk, say that again.
But it probably goes back to that competition from when we played against or played with each other, that we both don't want to be seen as the one that's let each other down in the team, so we don't do it.
I think there's something to be said about that. I think that generally team sports, it teaches you that. I've got a new guy that started, he used to play a lot of basketball, and he said that environment really helps him go the extra mile for his team, for his teammates, and not let them down. The fear of letting other people down is almost more than the fear of letting himself down.
Yeah, and the loss of face if you did let each other down, because we're so competitive. It's like, well, I don't want to be seen that you're carrying me or I'm carrying you, or all of that. Kind of want to be seen as equals inside of the business that we do together. So I think, there's definitely elements of that. But he's on a business level, he is more obsessed than I am. There's no hiding behind that. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. He's an addict to it. He wants the trophy of being a billionaire. That means a lot to him. I don't have that same obsession. I think there's a level of money. I think I'm obligated. If I can make money, I think I should make money. I think there's an obligation of people who have that ability. When you can make money, you should do it, and you decide to do some good with the money. But I don't have the same attachment to a billionaire. I look at that amount of money and go, I couldn't spend it. I think my wife would try, but I couldn't. And, I don't have that obsession with it.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think that I have a feeling that there's more money, more problems. I think that there's a good level of wealth that you can have. Having too little has its own headaches and can be quite hard. Having too much, I think, can bring more strife than is worthwhile, in my personal opinion. But I think different people handle it in different ways. But for me, I'm kind of like comfortable, luxurious perhaps, but certainly doesn't need to be what I would perhaps consider to be excessive, because I think that what it brings is a much higher level of responsibility. It's like, what am I going to do with that money now? How am I going to give it back? How am I going to, increase other people's prosperity in their lives, that sort of thing. And I'm just not sure whether I want to take on that kind of responsibility in my life. But everyone's kind of geared differently. You look at people like we mentioned, Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, he's all about trying to help other people, and he's also wants to own a certain football team or basketball team, or whatever it is. So everybody's got whatever drives them. And what I do agree with you is that if you can do it, you obviously have an obligation to do it, because that is like it's almost like a superpower.
Yep. I think you've nailed it there. I think the more money, more problems thing is very real, and I know it's a first world problem, but actually your ability to make money does bring expectation from other people, and that's the biggest challenge I've had whilst making money. Is people think that they want your help in money, but actually when you've made money, you know that sometimes giving people money is the worst help that you can give them. And yeah, I've seen that a lot. I've seen that tons of times. There's an expectation. It's hard to set standards. It's hard to set barriers with people. The more success you are showing, the more entitled sometimes other people become to getting that success from you rather than from earning their own. And I think that's a national problem, actually. I think we have that in the West far more than anywhere else in the world, that other people's success sometimes is perceived as detracting from yours, when actually there's an abundance of success. There's no limit to it. My having success doesn't stop you going and getting it. The only thing that stops you going and getting it is you. And I think that's a lesson. We could talk for several hours on that, because I'm passionate about that subject. That's a lesson I think we have to learn as the West at the minute, that there's earned and entitled, and they're two different things.
Yeah, too right. I've seen it many times, and it's more how people react to you is the problem than anything else, rather than how you change with that level of money. And as I said, some people are built to deal with it and do very well. But in terms of Prosperity Network, so we talk about teaching certain principles. One of the things that I like a lot about following you is you're very good at providing what I'd call myth busters, and trying to blow people's bubbles, and trying to read between the lines, see through the cracks, and very importantly, read through the media waves of what they're putting out there. Because in 2009, I got caught out. Whilst you in 2010 were doing really well and went into the market, I actually retreated, because I believed all of the FUD, as they call it, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that was being spread. And I probably missed some of the best years in the market in the last 20 years. And it's a minor regret that I have in life, but it is what it is. So in terms of what you guys teach at Prosperity Network, tell us a little bit about how that was set up, why it was set up, and what you guys are teaching.
The story of how prosperity is set up is quite interesting. I am an accidental leader of a no bullshit environment, basically. So when COVID hit in March 2020, as it was, I got so pissed off at other people in the space, because they did one of two things. They completely retreated and withdrew all help that the people who have already paid them should have been entitled to get at that point in time, or they started to sell based on fear. So they started to leverage the fear that was being put out in the market. And I'm a middle lane person. I think you probably find that a lot with some successful people, is they don't attach emotion to a decision. So you ask my wife, she'll tell you I'm too emotionless. But I've always thought, since my mental health struggle, which is an emotional situation, I've always gone, right, I'm going to stay middle of the road. I won't get too carried away being excited, and I won't get too carried away being depressed or negative or anti anything. I'm going to stay middle lane, and that's the best place I make decisions. So when 2020 March hit and those people did one of those two things, they either ran away and scurried away from people who needed their help most at that time, or they started to sell based on the fear of the greatest crash in history is coming and you need to take advantage of it. I got really pissed off. I got so angry because I just thought that isn't what people need at the minute. So Prosperity was started as just, I'm going to do a free Zoom on this. It was Wednesday at the time. I'm going to do a free Zoom this Wednesday, and I'm just going to talk about how I see the market, like what we're doing, how we're reacting to what's going on, which no one's ever really seen before. But there have been other similar instances post-war, post other viruses in other areas. So what we think is going to happen and why we think it's going to happen. If you want to come along, come along. And that turned into a series of just 12 weeks during lockdown of call. Everyone wanted to do it. And we ended up at 600-700 people on calls. It was, wow. Just went mad. And obviously people were at home, locked down, not much to do on a Wednesday evening, had probably exhausted Netflix and thought, I'll give this a go. I think people were just really thankful at that time that somebody had come to the market, and we weren't even selling anything. It wasn't an education system. It wasn't a program. It was just, everyone calm down. Here's what's going on. Here's a weekly update. They've released furlough. Let's look at what that means. They've done this. What does that mean for the market? So we did that for a series of 12 weeks. And it came to the end of 12 weeks, which was lockdown. And I say I'm an accidental leader. We're developers, really. I don't view myself as an education person. I view myself as a property person who talks about what they do in property, and property being primary. So we at the end of the 12 weeks came, and it was like, right, okay, that's the last. And people were like, well, what now? What does this mean? What's the next thing? And what are you going to do anything from here forward? So we've carried on since, really. We built a platform, subscription model, low cost, very Netflix based kind of model. In the last 12 to 18 months, it's been, how can we add more value? So we've got things like exclusive rates with Together Finance. We've got the cheapest arrangement fees in the UK for Prosperity members, other partnerships. We have weekly Zoom calls, quarterly meetups. Now we can do back in person. So it's just been very low end. We've got an education portal that's got 200, 300 hours worth of video content on there. So it's been a mad 12 to 18 months, but born completely by accident and completely out of frustration, out of what else was was out there in the market and what they did when the shit hit the fan, really.
That is very cool. I mean, to have 600-700 people on any call at any time is quite impressive. And it was good that you were able to see the opportunity to be able to help people and put together what sounds like a very, very solid community. I mean, to create 200 to 300 hours of video content. Tell us a little bit about what's in that content.
Yeah, there's an element of delegation there, as I'm sure you can expect. But there's all sorts. There's literally, we've got a whole range of people in our community. So we have about 750 paid members now since March 2020. So, well, actually not since March. We launched in August the 1st. As I said, the first 12 weeks were literally free Zoom. So August the 1st till now, we're about 750 members, and it's gone crazy. But there's all sorts. There's little bits on larger HMO conversions. There's all of the offers are on there. There's getting started for people that are a bit newer to it, goal setting, mindset, all of the property strategies, the compliance around sourcing. Mostly anything you can think of in property. All of the calls that we do, the weekly calls, they're all recorded and put on the portal for anyone that wants to catch up. So we have like a catch up opportunity for people. Anything you can imagine in property is on there. It's a busy old portal. So we always get questions in the community page of, has anyone got this and this, or anyone got any information on this? And there's a bit of a joke saying hashtag it's on the portal, because it's the answer to most of it. We've got so much on there. And whenever somebody comes up with a question or a bit of information that's not on the portal, it gives us the next idea of what we need to get on there. But people use the group very differently. We've got people who don't use the portal at all, but will make every call and they want to do the in-face thing. Or we've got people that don't make the calls because they're putting kids to bed, but they use the portal religiously. Everything. We've got so much on there. It's a busy old place.
And I guess this is a way of you actually giving back to the community, to the industry that's given you so much. and you're able to help pull other people up to where you are and get them going on their journey, even if it's just moving a little bit of cash and getting them a decent return better than the bank, or maybe it's building a massive business off the back of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I often comment, no act is truly selfless. I believe that strongly. And I've always been, people say, oh, I just want to help somebody. And you go, well, yeah, okay. But even if the feeling of helping somebody makes you feel good, then it's not really a selfless act. You're doing it for the feeling. So I would never say, oh, I'm on some pioneering, holistic, change the world march. There's a financial benefit to us. The business has already started to be very successful, but it wasn't built out of that. I've always done very, very well in business because I've networked very, very well. So I've always known the strength of the network. I've always known the strength of the community. So if I can bring good quality people into an environment, deals will be done. People might bring me deals that we can buy. It's no hard and fast rule of you're not allowed to do deals together or don't sell a deal inside the environment. It's a real place where people can do real deals. We have one rule, really. Well, two rules. We've got a no knobhead rule. You're not allowed in if you're a knobhead. If you're coming in to take advantage of people, we'll ask you to leave. And we've also got if you cock it up, you clean it up rule. If you cock something up, it's on you to clean it up, and the group will hold you accountable. And that's the way it should be. I've always believed that. So yeah, they're our two primary rules, really. You want to market yourself, you're compliant, you market yourself. You want to do deals with people, raise angel money. If you qualify them the right way, you do the right things, then that's what the environment's about. I've always done very well myself out of marketing and finding out where I fit in other people's strategies. So that community, yeah, it's not completely selfless. It's working as a business. I get a good feeling from seeing them all do incredibly well, which they are doing. There's also the network benefit of them doing deals together, then maybe bringing me a deal. I've got a portfolio to sell that somebody may have a buyer for. Abundance depends upon network and community. I believe that in a big way. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for me.
No, that's 750 people is impressive, and it's not been going that long, so I can only imagine that it's going to continue to grow. And it's a great name as well, to be fair. But one of the things that actually does make me quite curious is, I know there's you mentioned it already in terms of delegation, but you do spend a lot of time in Dubai, at least since I've been following you, which is not that long. But how do you manage to do so much, not even being in the country?
Yeah, well, delegation is the key thing. I think we were already buying a property in Dubai just as COVID hit. So we came out here a lot. We were selling stock out here, with a lot of expats out here with cash who want to invest in UK properties. We talked about past experience, and you've seen a lot of that yourself. Yeah. So it was working really well with us on that basis. If I'm completely honest, last year, I don't really believe in luck, but if there was a timing on completing on our property in Dubai that was lucky, it was last year. We escaped every lockdown, really. So we managed to get out to Dubai for every lockdown. So we were very fortunate in that we didn't experience UK lockdown like a lot of the people in the UK. We were here the whole of last winter, when everyone was complaining about the weather and it's crap and we're locked down. And I felt a bit guilty. I'm in Dubai and we're not really locked down. There are rules, but the weather's lovely, and I felt a bit guilty of that. So it was kind of an accident that we just made it work. We were thrown into this situation. COVID happened. It already started with the work from home for the first 6 to 8 weeks whilst the first lockdown. So we could see that some of it could already be delegated. And then as it went through the year and we were in Dubai, and I could see more and more that I don't have to be in the country. Weirdly, Dubai last year was full of people like me who were business owners from the UK or Europe who came to Dubai to escape lockdown in their country. And they learned that actually they could make their business work remotely. And everyone I was meeting was saying it. It's like we've been forced into this position and now we've made it work. And, the amount of people I met last year were like, we're looking at moving over here because we don't actually need to be in our country. And I think that's information era, contact. The worst part is time difference, I'll be honest, because you just end up working in both time zones and you knock yourself out. You do Dubai meetings in the morning at 8 a.m., but then you're still, UK's 5 p.m. is 9 p.m. here. So I've got a prosperity call this evening, and it doesn't start until 11 p.m. Because it's 7 p.m. UK time. So yeah, that was the hardest part, definitely by a long, long way. But it's a first world struggle, and it's very tolerable.
There's pros and cons.
Sorry, Sam. I was just going to finish. I found out it could work by being forced to find out it could work, and that's, we kind of made it work.
Like most things, I think if you get thrown in the deep end, it's kind of sink or swim. And there's pros and cons to everything in life. So there's always, what everything's fantastic in one way. There's always going to be some drawback, some cost to it. And I think, you got to weigh it up. And it sounds like you've made it work. You could be in worse places as well, working from 8 a.m. to 11 at night. And I know many people do that anyway. So that's fair enough. And I think with everything that you're doing, it is quite impressive, to say the least. One of the things that you are quite vocal about as well is sometimes, should I say, reading into the future, or being able to see where, you jumped on these calls and you were telling everybody about what you thought about the pandemic or what you thought was going to happen to business. I know you've mentioned a few things in the past about the whole work from home and how that will look in the future. I mean, everyone's got an opinion at the end of the day. But for the most part, from what I can see, what you kind of predict ends up being the case. And one of the reasons why I find it quite interesting is because you're always in line with kind of the way I'm seeing it. And I think many people as well, and that's probably why people follow you, because you're just quite vocal about it, and they enjoy that. So, but at the same time, I'm sure it's challenging as well, because you don't always get everybody to agree with you. But in terms of where you see the market going over the next the UK market, at least over the next 5 years or so, how do you see it evolving? I know you've advocated the high street, as I do. What other things are you anticipating?
Yeah, I think, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think the main reason without sounding wanky, a lot of what we said turned out right was because of the ability to remove emotion from a perspective. Like obviously I have, I've got a card in the game, as it were, being a property person, but I think you can make property work in any market. You just have to adapt to the market with your strategy. So I never panic about what the market's going to do necessarily. People are worried about the crash because it'll affect their value or their wealth. But what price you realize only matters when you sell. It doesn't matter if you're not going to sell. So the stock that you hold through a crash doesn't really matter as long as you don't have to sell. The price of that kind of becomes irrelevant, apart from your ego taking a bit of a battering that you're worth X thousand pound less. Because when house prices drop, rents increase, and when rents increase, your cash flow will go up. So you would take a better return on, yes, I'm worth less, but my income would go up like it's never been up before. So I think people worry about the emotional side of things, where I don't really have that perspective. I view every challenge as an opportunity. I think the biggest challenge for the next 3 or 4 years probably is that the market's going to be hot. I think it's going to run hot for a little while yet. If you look at the 3 basic principles, I talk about this all the time. It's supply, demand, and availability of finance. Supply has never been lower, demand has never been higher, and as a country, we've never been as liquid. If a crash happens now, I think it would catch everybody out. I genuinely do. And the whole people giving the whole mindset behind people now at the moment is, well, it can't carry on forever. And you go, well, it has done historically. House prices have carried on increasing historically. They always trend up periodically. So that's an emotional statement. There's no logic behind that statement of it can't carry on increasing. It can carry on increasing. It has done forever, really. Obviously, there are dips in the market, and that will come when supply drops or demand increases significantly to outweigh the supply, or the lenders pull out of the market. It'll be one of those 3 things. In 2007, obviously, it was the lenders pulling out of the market that had a massive impact, that created so much opportunity for other people. But yeah, the next 2 or 3 years, I can't see, 3 or 4 probably, I can't see anything but growth.
Yeah, I think generally, as an investor, you need to remain always optimistic. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the market in the first place. At the same time, there's there's boom bust and there's general. If you look at the graph, it's kind of going up and down, but it's generally going in an upward trend. You've got things like inflation, you've got the growing population, so the demand's high, and as you said, liquidity is at an all-time high as well, with the amount of money that they're pumping into the system, especially with all this furlough stuff now. And then, I mean, I'm of the same opinion. I think over the next few years, we will all be benefiting from a pretty prosperous property market. So it's about being adaptable. It's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the most adaptable. And things change, trends change, high street will change and evolve, retail will change and evolve. So it's about being able to be at the forefront of those changes to make the most of them and get the best returns when they come around. Danny, you mentioned it before, you are a property person, and this is all about property people. What is it that you would say it takes for all those people that are out there wanting to get into property, wanting to grow as a property professional? What do you think it takes to be a property person?
Oh, sure. I mean, it depends on how you would define a property person ultimately. As in, there are a lot of people who buy one or two properties that I would never really class as a property person, because they've got a little bit of liquidity. They've decided to buy an asset, but within 2 or 3 years, they see it as a headache because a tenant hasn't paid, or, they have this maintenance bill that they weren't expecting, or whatever it may be. I think to be a true property person, as in it's going to be my career or it's going to be a big part of my investment plan for my life, you've got to be able to take the rough with the smooth. You've got to understand that it's a numbers game. I think, this probably relates back to literally what we were just talking about. You've got to be able to listen to the right people and accept the right information. It doesn't happen as quickly as people will tell you, and nothing is as defining as people tell you. So one shit deal doesn't define you as a property person. We've all done one bad deal, but you're not going to get rich quick in 7 days, 12 months, 24. It's slower than you think. And I think that does relate a little bit back to the boom and crash. Boom and crash, they don't really happen. They're media titles, really. Everyone gets onto them. This boom that we've gone to in this last 18 months, it took 18 months to increase 10% on average across the UK. You compare that to the markets, no one would be calling that a boom. Crypto can go 10% in a day. No one's talking about a boom and crash. Just the property market has this perception around it that a 10% increase in 18 months is a boom. Or, you look at 2008, 2009, an 18% on average fall across 18 months that are then recovered 50% in the next 12 months was viewed as a crash. And you go, it's not really that dramatic. So yeah, that's a good thing. And I guess for some people it's a bad thing because it's slower than you think. But it's a very strong, you need to have a long-term view on property and understand that it's a long-term play that you will benefit from greatly if you commit to it in the short term over the long term. And I think that's probably key for people. I think property can be unattractive to some because it is quite slow. Everything's slow. Getting a response from a solicitor at the minute is bloody slow. So, the idea of getting rich in 12 months when the solicitor might take 3 weeks to get back to you on an email it just seems a false illusion to me. So I think realistic approach in the market without there being limits, because I'm not a person that limits people. I've had success far beyond what I thought I would have. But you have to be realistic, definitely.
Be realistic, take a long-term view, and I think, surround yourself with good people is all good advice. Danny, I could spend all day speaking with you. There's lots I didn't touch upon, like how you find so much time to do so many cool posts on Instagram, sharing your views, and much, much more about your favorite deals that you've done and the deals that have gone badly. I hope we can do this another time at some point and catch up with you and see how things are growing and going for you.
Look forward to it. Absolutely. Let me know.
Thank you. Have a great day. I'm sure you will.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in today. We've got lots more super active property people coming up. So keep up to date. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, leave us a comment, share us and find us across social media. And we'll see you next time.